Hello, and welcome to another episode of Recalculating Your Map to Joy podcast, the show about how career zigzags aren't detours or wrong turns, but actually create our path to joyful work and joyful lives. I'm Marie Clark, a career transition coach and possibility partner, and I help women move from careers that drain them to ones that light them up without losing their identity or income. If you're sitting in a job right now that fills your wallet but is slowly sucking your soul, this podcast is for you because my guest today has been exactly where you are. And I'm so excited to introduce my guest today, Paola Vita. She is a nonprofit fundraising consultant and coach, but it wasn't always this way. Paula, welcome.
Hi, it's great to see you.
Yeah. So give us the 60-second version of your career zigzag. Where did you start and where did you land?
Sure. So I started after college doing drug counseling in public schools and also as an outward bound instructor in the field. So working with kids in New York City and taking them hiking and backpacking. And thought for a second there, I really fell in love with the counseling piece. But I hadn't studied psychology in my undergrad. So I enrolled in a master's program to get my master's in counseling psychology. Spent 1 year in a working in a psych hospital with adolescents and then got a phone call from Outward Bound that they were launching new public schools that were going to be innovative and interesting, and would I be interested in doing that? And I remember that being a really difficult work at the moment, but really exciting. And so I jumped ship from what I was probably getting my PhD in psychology to starting doing education reform in New York City, and worked on the program side for probably 10 or 15 years. And then I hit kind of a burnout point where I was working 7 days a week and a ton, and it kind of crept up on me. It was rewarding, so I kept doing it. And thought, well, the only way I can get out is to just leave. And luckily, I had a mentor there who was the CEO who came to me and said, "How about fundraising?" And I thought, well, I'm not sure because the only opening was the head of fundraising. And I thought, well, I've done some grant write. I used to write grants. If there was a program I wanted to do, I didn't have funding. I'd write some small grants. So I basically launched from doing program to all of a sudden leading a capital campaign to buy a building and doing fundraising. And because I had some nice support around me, like just jumped to it fast, and then took on communications as well, and became the chief advancement officer for 27 years, and really loved it. Worked with the board, worked with foundations, worked with the press and government funding. And then my husband and I both decided that when our youngest was in college that we wanted to leave New York City. And so we once again, this one took more planning. It was a 5 year plan to move to Maine. And I stepped back to think about what is it that I love the most about my job. And what I really found after doing the same role for 27 years was that I was really finding myself tapping back into that counseling background and working with people. And I had a team, there were 5 of us. And so I really enjoyed coaching my team, supervising them, and whether it was coaching them to stay or to leave, to think about what's next for them, because I didn't think it was, it's not always the right thing it's easier for me if they stay, but it's also important for people to be happy in what they're doing. And so I left the organization. I did a coaching program to get my certification. And I am now, for the last year, I've been consulting and doing fundraising, consulting, and coaching for nonprofit leaders.
Wow. So you went from kind of education towards therapy, started on the therapy, did program management, then you went to fundraising, and now you are back in kind of coaching and consulting. And so, first of all, a couple things stood out for me. One was how, for your second career leap, you really spent some time thinking about it. And you did what I like to call the look back to look forward and started to figure out what brought you joy in your career. But it's that one in the middle there, that one where you were starting to get burned out on um, program management, program organization. Forget what you said your title was.
There was lots of titles because that was one of the problems.
There we go. And you kind of made that leap into fundraising. So, what kind of made you realize that you needed that change? And was it the same or different each time you made a big leap?
Mhm. Think it was a particular time, like I wasn't feeling great because I was working too much. So I wasn't sleeping. I was not, I kind of had filled my dance card. That was and I felt this obligation. I think in the nonprofit world in particular, sometimes you can feel like it's just a very giving. You do it because it's rewarding to give, but then all of a sudden you realize you're giving all of it, and there's nothing left in terms of free time and family. And so I think for me it was classic burnout in a way. Like I just remember going on a walk. I was working every weekend. So I was working that weekend and I told my boss, like, I quit. Like I'm not going to do this anymore. And he said, just let me come to the Sunday program with you. And we walked from the South Bronx back to Manhattan together. And it was during that walk that we talked about, he brought up this idea of me applying to the head of fundraising job. And we talked through what that might look like. I think I was 30 years old, so I think I was also didn't have as much experience as I had the second time I did a bigger jump. And so I think I was for me it was I was just gonna stop and then figure things out. And because I was so tired I couldn't imagine figuring it out in the moment. And I think taking what I really grateful for that I told him and that we had the conversation and that I really thought that through and then had the courage to do something I'd never done before. So I think and realizing that if everyone else seems to think you can do it, that asking ourselves, like telling ourselves that we can't do it is and then the people around you, if you're open to getting the support and to learning that you can really pivot.
Yeah. And that idea of being so stuck, you couldn't even really see any way out. And I kind of heard you were ready to quit.
Yeah.
That is a very common place for people who are kind of stuck and burnt out in their career. And I love that you were open. And then, as you said, you had the courage to take a step forward and kind of take that leap. So, for your two big career leaps, what were you most afraid of? And was it the same thing both times, or was it different for each career leap?
I mean, the biggest one's probably the same of both. It's so that fear of failure. What if I do this and I don't like it? So failure, not only not being good at the job, but also whether I enjoy it. And you don't know until you try it. So there's sort of this leap of faith, I think, of trusting yourself that there's some voice in your head saying, this is interesting and interesting enough to pursue it. And also to look back on the various forks and realizing like, and it doesn't have to be the last fork. Like, so you can always change again.
Yeah, yeah, that idea of kind of trusting that inner voice is something we don't do a lot of. And our inner voice has a lot of wisdom when we can learn to listen to it. So you had that fear of failure, the fear of making the wrong choice when you made your career leaps. Was there a moment when you almost went back or went, this was the wrong thing?
Not really. I mean, I think sometimes I'd ask myself, like, what if it's sort of, okay, I had these forks. What if I had become a psychiatrist or a psychologist? Or what if I had, that would be really different. But I think my personal, like, what I always tell myself is like, once you've made a choice, you've made the choice. It's sort of, it's lean into it and trust, like, allow for the change to happen. And I like to think there are no mistakes, which I know is, but it's that idea of if we judge ourselves for the steps that we take and then we're always second guessing ourselves as opposed to like, I've made this decision and stick with it. And I find that's really helpful.
Yeah, that's a great thought. And I'm kind of curious, knowing what you know now, what would you say to someone sitting where you were right before you made each of your career leaps?
think if they were in the burnout place, I would particularly say like don't try not before you leave, talk to some people, like figure out maybe 5 people to talk to that might be some might be within the place you're leaving from, and some might be in places you might be leaving to. And I know it's different for everybody. Some people might actually need that break to be able to think. That's fine too. And and the second one, I think it's more if someone has the luxury of time or thinking ahead, it's when we're even when we're in those moments of comfort that everyone, I think people ask this in interviews a lot, like what do you where do you see yourself in 5 years? But I think for ourselves, like taking when we're even when we're jogging along and having a great time, is stopping every once in a while and saying, is this where I see myself in 5 years, whether it's geographically or the job or relationship wise, but thinking about the whole me. And that was really helpful the second time was to, because it really was more about geography for us at first. And then the other things fell in. So, okay, if I'm going to live in that geography, what could I be doing?
Yeah, I love hearing that story and that idea of even when things are going well, it's a good idea to kind of look where you want to be 3, 4, 5 years down the road to kind of get an idea of do you need to maybe pre-plan for a pivot that you might want to make in a few years. So thank you for bringing that really cool story with two giant career leaps in it. And that idea of I can make a choice and I can always go back if it didn't work out the way I expected. It's just an amazing thought to keep as we start to look at what to do when we start to get burned out. So, how can people find you if they want to learn more about you or the work you do?
The easiest is on LinkedIn. So Paola Vita on LinkedIn, and I think I'm pretty easy to find that way. And I do have the name of I have a consulting group called Take Root Consulting, but don't have a website currently. My email is paolagvita@gmail.com, which is also fine to use.
And we will put all of that in the show notes so
Thank
that you can easily find Paula if you need her or would like to learn more about her or her story. And so, to those of you listening, if today's story sparked something in you, if you heard yourself in any of that, and I want you to know your own zigzag story is waiting. You don't have to choose between your bills and your happiness or your mental health and your joy. And so if your career GPS is saying recalculating, come find me at movetojoycoaching.com. The link is in my bio. And if this podcast helped you, please share it with someone that might need to hear it. I'm Marie Clark. This is Paola Vita. And this has been Recalculating Your Map to Joy podcast. We'll see you next time.